meeting prior, just to see what, make sure I was hearing what you guys said and stuff like that, and I could not understand you. I mean, I couldn't hear, so we need to keep them down.
Okay.
They do have closed captions on there, but that's not easy to listen to.
Are you sure it's not your hearing?
I'm sure, because we sounded okay.
There's no finger pointing going on here, is it? I see how this works.
I resemble that remark.
All right, well, thank you for being here. This is our fourth budget session. We're going to get started. We had some questions, you guys had some questions from the last session. What would be the effect of the general fund taking different amounts of the increased valuation? What was the average home valuation increase? And can we quantify the reasons for costs and show what the effect on the homeowner is? So we went through this and we're trying to answer those questions for you. Rebecca's going to start going through here and then I'll jump in. We'll go back and forth.
So in the new proposals that we're going to go over for you tonight, keeping in mind that what we were asked in those previous questions is, could we come up with some ideas of what it would look like if we reduced the mill levy to the point where we could see what the assessed valuation would look like if it had come in differently. So you had your revenue neutral rate already. We had projected one with a 5%, and we're going to show you a couple other options that we came to if the assessed valuation had come in a little differently. However, we needed to keep a couple things in mind. With this increased in assessed valuations, some of our funds were already budgeted for increase, such as the library and bond and interest, and there's things that we could not touch because those funds had already been committed for other projects. So that brought us to being reminded that all the proposed cuts had to come from the general fund. And this is especially important as you saw some of our pieces that come from utilities or other special funding sources in your overall budget. We really, in this moment, because what we're dealing with is the mill levy that affects these, is just those pieces from the general fund that are not library, bond and interest, special liability, or airport. The proposals that we brought for you, we did a careful review of our services that we were able to. We tried to prioritize necessary functions, so taking into account things that were needed by state law or other commitments that we already have. We made a list of possible service reductions. It might not seem like some of these are actual services. They might feel like items, but these are, we took the verbiage a little bit broadly. We have the new swing sets on one of our potential cuts. This was a new swing sets at 3 parks. We do have on the City Commission's priority list to improve public amenities and quality of life. So while it might not be a service as such, it is a service in as much as we are providing it to our visitors and residents. Another proposed reduction would be the fire and EMS accreditation. This is an overall internal assessment of the operations of the fire and EMS organization. We also took out $10,000 in various trainings and travel. Those would be reductions simply in the administration budget. We're still weighing the return on investment on very specific items, but we've offered that up. We took out a golf course transfer of $100,000. This would remove the additional transfer that we had proposed for course improvements. And then lastly, the salary survey implementation. This would be to set aside some of funding that we could increase wages to stay competitive in our job market after a salary survey. Looking at retention and succession planning, this came up as in a number of your department heads' requests, and this was the way to do it equally amongst the city. Go to the next slide. And then lastly, we also took on eliminating most of the right-of-way mowing. And these would be the places that right-of-way mowing would be removed for that total dollar amount of a little over $13,500. It still leaves 4 major arterial or right-of-ways into the city, but this is mowing that we do not have to do, but of course adds to the beauty and aesthetic of the community. Taking into consideration those cuts, those reductions in services, what you'll see tonight are 3 options that we prepared for you. One is what we consider our 5% option, where the mill levy is reduced to the effectual amount as the same as a 5% increase in the valuation. So this is if we had come with our assessed valuation increasing only 5%. The loss from where we are today would be about $666,000. The cuts included in this proposal that you'll see include the wage study implementation, the swing sets, the fire and the EMS accreditation, the right-of-way mowing, those various trainings and travel, and the golf course transfer
This would be about 3.8 mills
of reduction.
of reduction.
And then in the middle is the 10%. That is the mill levy is reduced to the effectual amount as the same as a 10% increase in assessed valuation, and that's
1.38 mills
so.
we would lose.
And that loss of mills in dollars is then $236,386. And that cut includes everything except for the wage study implementation. And then at the 12.7, which is where our assessed valuation has come in, the mill levy is maintained at that rate, and then all the proposed projects are funded. So those are the three that we're going to go over today. At the end, of course, any comments, suggestions, or modifications we can take. We just wanted to start with a baseline of offering you some differences that we came up with after our last budget workshop. So
This one is just, if you remember the forecast page I hand you, this is just the very bottom line that kind of shows the three different scenarios, and if we took all those expenses out, where we would end up in 2029. It shows how it progresses down those 5 years. And of course, with forecast, you remember, we're spending every penny in every year's budget. We have so much revenue kind of applied each year coming in, and the expenses are all the same each year. So there's no human interaction in there. So this is the worst case scenario. If we went with the 5% increase, which would be 52.741 mills, we'd be in the red by 300,000 with a -1 reserve. And then at 10%, which is 55.253 mills, we'd be at $1.4 million at a 5% reserve. And then if we keep the full increase, we end up in 2029 at a $2.4 million reserve, which is 9%. And that just kind of shows you where we'd be if all things were even.
And our next slides pretty much lay that out again, as Donna mentioned. So again, just to reiterate, that first scenario is when the mills are set at the same as what a 5% increase in assessed valuation. This is a little different than we've done in other budget years because we're not discussing a potential mill increase to cover. This is trying to work backwards in what our assessed valuation is today and what would potential reduction in the mill levy would be like to get to these certain numbers. So we're kind of taking a different perspective of it than we have in the past few years. Again, that lists all of those service reductions that we offered up and has that ending balance with a -1%. And the mill levy is at 52,741. And the 10% situation, which again is putting the mill levy at where it would be if there had been the same value of a 10% increase in assessed valuation. That includes all of the cuts except for the salary survey implementation. And you do get that ending balance of 5%, 5 years out. And then in the 12.7, of course, we do have all projects being funded. And in that 2029, the projected ending balance is at 9%. And the mill levy is at 56633. I know we're moving around pretty quickly, but this slide is a slightly different setup to something that you've seen before. You're usually given what a homeowner would pay in different valuations of their home and how that would work out. Because everyone is still working on their budgets, we took simply the city's portion of their tax bill. So you'll be reminded that the school district, the state, and the county still have their portion to add on. But this is not the total number. This is simply the city's portion. And again, because we aren't looking at a today rate plus an increase, this is to look a little bit of what our city portion would look like if we set the mill levy at these 3 different places. So to keep it consistent for you, we've labeled it with the 12.7, the 10%, and the 5. But just remember that that sets the mill levy at those various mill levies we've already gone over. And you can kind of see where a home, if you had a $100,000 home and we, in the city, levied the mills with the full increase, it would be $940.33 a year. But if it was only the 5%, it would be the $889.75. One question that was asked is if we could see what the average homeowner increase was. We do know from the county that it was right about the 12 to 13%. However, again, because this is an assessed valuation increase, we can't really look at what a homeowner would have paid last year to this year because we don't know how much their individual property increased. So while the average may have been 12%, some people's obviously went up more and some people's less. And so this is, again, a different perspective than we've been able to offer you in past years because the difference in the valuation is a different type of item that we've had to look at. So it's not quite apples to apples. On the flip side of this, I think I have the next one. This, I wanted to break it down a little bit about what that annual difference is for the homeowner, so you're not having to do all the math. This is pretty much just the subtraction of the chart in front of you. So you can see that the difference between a 12.7 and a 10%, setting the mill levy where those would be the assessed valuations, again, on a $200,000 house is about $35.86, comes out about $2.99 a month. Or if you went to the 5% option, it would be about $101.15. Again, that's on their total tax bill because we can only affect the city's portion, not the county, school district, or state. And then we can go ahead and do the forecasts.
What I've done here is use the forecast, but I've left all the expenses included. So this is the worst case scenario. If we left everything in and we only kept 5% of the valuation, we'd end up, $1 million in the red at a -4. If we spend all of it and we stay at the 12.7, where we were earlier. So it just kind of just shows you how, just a different perspective if we left all the expenses in and where we're going to end up. But we didn't take all of our increase. And then I went to overall the 5 ad valorem funds, and this is where they would end up, where we cut the same level of mills that we have now, leaving everybody the same except the general fund. Together, we would, at 5%, we would be $2,367,000 in the red, and 10%, we'd be $105,000 in the red, and then if we kept the whole valuation, it would be $1.1 million. This is over our 5 funds together, because I usually give you the big picture and then just the general. That was just another way of looking at it if we spent everything. And you need to remember, too, that when we put it in the budget, it doesn't mean it's going to be spent. And anytime you want us to bring something to you to see if we have the money to spend it, like if the salary, if we do the compensation study and we do need to go up, that's all going to come to you before we do anything. So that would be on your approval that when we have the money to do it, stuff like that. Just because it's in the budget doesn't mean it will be spent. This is just another chart, way of looking at the 3 different forecasts and where we are today and where we would go down through the years with nothing changed.
We only have a couple of more slides for you this evening, so I don't know if this would be a good time to ask for any questions.
Were you able to come up with or calculate the difference between existing home sale and the valuation, and then new homes. I think that question came up last time.
No, say that again.
Of existing home sales, because it says here, single family, I mean, around 11 or 12%. Does that mean all housing, whether it's existing, whether it's new, whatever it is? Is that, were you able to differentiate the two?
The whole assessed valuation went up 12.7, and how much of that was new?
New construction?
New construction, no, we did not have just new construction of homes, no. We have improvements, we had like a 1.5 million of new improvements that were put on, but not for, can't really tell what new homes, who was new and who was old.
Okay.
And that also would not include if you had a home that had been an existing home that had major renovations to it as well.
Yeah. Well, I know I, for one,
Oh, I'm sorry, it was 2.8 million of new improvements,
2.8 million.
of new improvements.
But that's of all types, that's,
Yeah.
I, for one, am not willing to sacrifice the golf course and taking that 100,000. Oh, before I even get to that, of that 612,000 that we've been paying, and I think the last payment is what, in December, for the bonds on the Sand Creek
This year it
development?
went down to 325,
Okay.
but
wh-
yes,
But when that's done,
this year.
refresh me again, I know we were gonna do, what, 300-some thousand to the library, and then we were thinking that 100,000 to make improvements out the golf course was gonna come out, but is there anything else that is committed out of that 600,000 originally? Do you know,
No.
Suzanne?
I don't
We
think
never,
so.
we didn't talk about anything else, it was
So
just
it's
kind
just
of,
the library fund, and then we were gonna use the 100,000 to ultimately make improvements out there? And then the rest, whatever it is, we haven't committed anything else.
well, it kind of
well-
just goes in with everything.
It's not, yeah, we didn't pull that out separately because remember, you approve projects as we go and we build them. For instance, Southeast 4th Street, the box and street improvements. Those types of projects then go on that bonded interest list. And so you may go down in this golf course payment on those bonds, but you've got a whole other set of projects
I
that are over
understand
here.
that, I'm just trying to find a way, I'm just not willing to sacrifice that 100,000 and to keep the integrity and the value of that golf course the way it's seen through the eyes of the players. Because there needs to be some serious improvements over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. And if we start taking that 100,000 out, where's it gonna come from? And it's just gonna slowly diminish in value, and I'm not willing to do that. That's just my voice about that.
Don't they have their own reserve account?
Well, they have money since they've been doing so well
Right.
with COVID
That's
right
what
now.
I'm saying. Is,
Yes,
I mean, I think they're looking at maybe even another banner year that they
yeah.
can
They're
cover
going to
that
be
this
putting,
budget year.
they're going to be putting stuff in improvements as well.
Right.
But some of those improvements cost a lot of money that they need to,
Well, so does running the city.
yes, exactly. They're kind of a mini city, but yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily take it off the table. I love that course and everything, but if they are having that banner year and they are able to cover that payment so that we don't have to, or cover that reserve for this cycle, then I would prefer that they do it.
It's just in two different pockets of money, because we keep this reserve and then pay for things, and that's the only difference. And they keep their reserve and pay for things. But it's our money, all of it is.
Right.
And they don't spend it without your approval, whatever pocket it is in.
There's nothing right now. I can go ahead and finish these slides off here. These are mainly informational. I know that this is all old hat for all of us in the room, but just to help educate the public, everybody that owns property pays into property tax unless you're tax exempt in a certain piece. And we do know we have a larger amount of tax exempt properties than is average because we have a lot of great charitably minded people in the community. But for those that don't always keep this in the forefront of their mind, property tax is at a different percentage, and your industrial and commercial is taxed at 25% of the assessed valuation, and your residential, whether it's single family or multifamily, is 11.5. And just something to keep in mind when we're thinking about these tax mill levies is that we can't set a different mill levy for the different payers. So just when we look at some of the growth and we're looking to capture some of that growth, it might be industrial or commercial, we can't really separate that desire from the residential piece. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind, is mainly educational for the general public. And on that as well, this is just, again, to put it out there so everybody has it. We do want to make sure that everyone's aware. For those that may need it, there are property tax relief programs at the state. And this is, again, just as not necessarily for us to think about it in this meeting, but just to have out there that the state does offer us a little bit of assistance for our taxpayers. And as people start thinking about this, and we do know we've had a large increase in assessed valuation, this is just another resource that we can, and we will here at the city, help people when they do have questions, that we are able to, keep that in mind of taking care of our residents. So something that other cities and counties have been making sure that they market, and this is just a marketing piece for us by including it in a public forum. And then that gets us to the rest of our discussion.
Now, you said a while ago that commercial is taxed at 25% of their assessed valuation. Actually, the assessed valuation is 25% of its fair market value.
Thank you for correcting me.
Just to clarify. So, yeah. And houses are taxed at 11.5% of their fair market value as appraised by the appraiser's office, which we have nothing to do with.
Are these tax relief programs something that they will have to apply for, or will it automatically
They have to apply for it.
okay.
But we will be glad to help them if they have any questions on how to do it.
The homestead is part of their Kansas income tax return,
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
but the others, I think, is an
That's right.
application process.
Do you know what let me come from the angle that I always have in the past. And I know that when people talk about their taxes going up, they're looking at it as a whole. They're looking at the whole thing, not just the city portion. People usually I didn't break that down. Do you know what the total mills are? Because are they 170 some? That's with everything. That's county, city, state. Because it's easy to take that and go back and look at your appraised value, and then you look at take that times the 11.5 to get your assessed value, then you take that times the total mills, divide by 1,000, I think that's what it is. And so is it, okay, Erin's shaking her head, yes. So then when you do that, you can go back and you can do what they were prior to this increase, and then that is what's helpful to me. That is what's helpful to me to see, because when I think of my taxes going up, I'm not thinking just of city. I'm thinking of everything, because that's what affects me. So I'm thinking they're around 170 some. They may be more since
For
if we-
2024, it's 178.21. If
Okay.
you look at what I have on the screen,
Blow it up, there you go.
There you go.
I can,
Now,
kind
is
of
that a statement, is that from a website?
No.
Or did you make
I
that?
made this. Yeah, it shows the
Okay.
state of Kansas always gets 1.5. USD for this year was 62.132, and that's what this would equal. Harvey County was 43.593, and they got this much. And then this is on a $300,000 home that I moved. I added a 13% increase in. So it came up to 339. So this is what they would pay if they increased 13%. This is not what they paid at 300,000. This is just something I was looking at with the increase in it. So the whole property tax bill is 6,900. The city's portion is 27 of that.
So the 70.981, that is where we are if
Well,
we receive,
Where did that come from? What's that, 70.981?
I was,
That is not correct.
okay,
I must have pulled up the wrong file. This is an older one.
okay.
But it should be I'm going to make sure I got it right here.
Now, do
72.361.
we have this and I just don't know it or
No,
haven't seen it?
this is something I just,
Okay,
every once in a while, you guys ask for it, and I kind of do it, and
I always
this is
like
the only,
that.
there's nothing out there that says this unless you go individually to people.
Okay, yeah, because when I've had emails from people in the past, that's what I've had conversations about, is all, because that's what they're looking at.
That's what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Because they don't, yeah.
And because when you talk just about city, in proportion to everything else, they're not, what really seems big to them is the whole picture, the whole
Right.
thing.
Right.
And so city is just a chunk, but they're thinking of the whole thing. And I know because that's how I always did it.
Yeah.
And so, that sheet that you just had, so that's wrong, the 70.9?
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
I don't have it loaded,
Okay.
but I can show that to you. It's not on this computer, is what I'm saying.
So,
It's ballpark, though.
It's ballpark,
Yeah.
yeah.
so we are, okay, so we are at 72.361?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay, so a person could go back and look at 2022, 2023 for the whole picture. I mean, that's what I would do. And I would see the increase because that would also include, well, then your valuations and then just the mill levy increase. That would give me a picture, and I could certainly use this to do that, of what people are actually going to deal with.
Because it's individual. Each one's going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is the same.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, my concern with regard to the reductions, we are getting ready to have industry take off. And I'm not sure that this is the time. I'm a taxpayer just like everybody else is. But with industry going to be taking off, Hillsborough, GAF, I'm wondering, is this the time that we show those two industries what we're doing by making cuts like this? When I think of that enormous list of cuts with regard to mowing, these are the things that people call on, and they think things look shabby. These little areas here and there. I can't tell you the number of times that people have commented to me, why doesn't the city mow this, or why doesn't? Well, they do and they will. But people notice those things. And that's a concern to me because I can just see the emails and hear the phone calls and the comments. But even more so and equally so is the industry that we have coming and what this will do and look like to families that will locate here as a result of jobs with these places. And just even those people coming to our community to work and not necessarily having housing here. That's a concern to me. And the golf course, what a fantastic thing going on out there right now. And, you know, hoping that maybe in 3 more years we can get them to come back. I mean, that's a hope. And I know that's something that that team out there would like to see. So I only want to see continued improvements made there. I don't know that this is the time for us to slow anything down there. I get where you're coming to from, Commissioner Stennett. I really do. I just think about these things, and we're starting to get on a roll for good. And on the projections, I think I've talked to you, Donna, about it too, and we've talked about it publicly. When we start seeing, you know, below the 15%, that is the time, even if we accept all this revenue, and I know that there are some out there that are not going to like hearing this, but that is the time that we look at that and we do consider, so that we stay where we need to, that coupled with knowing and finding out what valuations will come in as we have to wait every year, that is the time that we start considering those incremental, if we need to do increases to keep it at a level, that's when we do that. We don't wait 5 more years for a chunk increase. And that wouldn't be pleasing to the people that are coming in here to industry. They wouldn't like that for the people that are moving in to work at their places. So I think these things are things that we need to think about too as we are looking at these things here. That's what's going on in my mind.
I don't think 12.7 is incremental. I think it's a lot. You know,
Well, I'm talking, when I say incremental, I'm talking about we should be okay by what you have projected here. And this gives our citizens a break. But then when we start looking at things as we move along in the next couple of years, okay, now how do we keep this? And we may not have to do that if valuations come in as they have. Maybe we'll be at a point where we can consider something different. But I don't know, it's a struggle for me to consider these reductions.
Will somebody describe the timeline for the salary, wage, and structure assessments, and then the implementation timeline for that as well?
Sure. The RFP is currently being worked on as we speak. We plan on issuing that RFP in the next couple of weeks if commission is amenable to it. Once that RFP goes out, we have a month to collect these bids, these proposals, we review them. The timeline that we're requesting would be a review period from sometime in September through January, February. So we give them about 6-7 months. Through that time, we look at classification, we look at job families, we look at pay, we look at a myriad of things because it's a full-blown classification and compensation study, not just pay. And then recommendations are made sometime early in the year, at which time we present to you, and that's when a staggered or an implementation plan is put into place. So we would have cash available if there was needed changes in February when that report comes out and it says your X department needs a shift, and we would have the cash available to do that, to move around.
Now, changes, when you say changes, is that in addition then to what is already built into the budget as a result of the potential study? might be what you might be thinking the
No,
result?
that would be the budget for it. So if the consultant says, in order to get you to market on these 10 positions, you need an extra $75,000 to get them up to par, that would come out of that budget.
Out of that 447.
Right.
Yes.
But in my world, it's the other way. In my world, you do the study, you find out what you got to get, and then you find the funds. You don't go into the consultant and say, I got $500,000, how can I spend it best across my staff?
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah, we're not, I don't think that's what we want to do. That's just kind of a built-in cushion to help, but we're still in the red at the end of the year. If we don't have to spend that, we won't. And we're not going to say we have this much. But the last time we did a compensation study, we had to get things moving, we had to come up with $600,000. That's how much that cost, besides our raises and stuff like that, to get everybody moved over. So that took us like 3 years to
Right.
implement.
How'd
So
you come up with the 447 and
Right.
55?
that's a 3%
Okay.
on just the wage portion
Across all?
across general.
Okay.
And-
So, but what is your standard COLA, merit, or whatever? What was built
Built
in to
in.
begin with?
2% on a COLA.
Uh-huh.
Steps are 3% each one.
Okay.
So on a next year, if you meet the requirements of the merit and you get your COLA, that is a 5% increase.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm wondering if the timing of this, what is the study going to cost?
We don't know. We did request for pricing from different consultants, and the lowest was in the $18,000 to $20,000 range, and the highest was in the 70. So from 18 to 70, somewhere in between. Yeah.
I would like to spend no more than 50
Yeah.
or lower.
Yeah, and let me, from my experience, I wanted to address the question of the implementation of the set aside. So if we don't set anything aside, let's say we do the study in February, we get a result. In February, they say, okay, you need $200,000 to get everybody up to par. $200,000 is not in the budget, so we would have to wait until 2026
Right.
for implementation. $200,000 is an extra mill. So unless we carve out a mill, we're going to have to cut. And that may be tougher a year from now, because the valuation may not be higher, it may be lower. So we are taking the opportunity, since we have the ability to set aside some cash, to set it aside. Now, that doesn't mean, just like Donna said, that we have to spend it on this. This could go towards reserves. It's up to you. And it doesn't even have to be as much, or it could be more. There's fluidity there.
If
Well-
we don't budget it, you can't spend it.
Right.
And I understand
Yeah.
that. I also understand that timing is everything as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes you plan so that it's actually in effect in the next budget year.
Sure.
In
not
which
in-
you're already a year behind then again.
Yeah.
Because you do it at this point in time, and you're another year behind, so that you're already behind.
Only if you ask for it to be delivered to you in January are you a year behind. If you ask for it to be delivered to you in June, or when we're in the middle of the budget for the next cycle,
Oh,
then
sure.
you're not a year behind.
Just for clarification, maybe I missed it, the 2% COLA and 3% merit, or if it's the other way around, that is a separate number than the 447.
Yes.
That's already
It's
in
already
the
in.
budget.
All right, so then,
So this is 3% on top of what is already included with, okay.
But this is spending down our reserves for that extra money. So it's really not there, it's what could be spent and we'd be okay. So it's not like the money, we're going to take this money, stick it in the bank over here in another pocket. It's just, we're saying it could be spent, we could drop down our reserves that much more if we needed to.
In the survey, then, they'll be comparing our wages with other class 1 cities?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
But they'll also possibly come up with a new band or a new classification that we may not have in our organization. That, they're really great things to do.
Yeah.
It's just-
One thing, too, we might mention is some people have been here long enough that they hit the very top of the pay scale. And without a new classification study or something, they're tapped out. So all they ever get is 2% a year. And we have a lot of loyal employees who only get that.
It's like teaching.
Well, and they also look at not just other municipalities, but say private sector, because a mechanic for the city
Needs to know.
is like a mechanic in the private sector. And so they, if they're going to jump ship, they could jump ship to someplace besides another city.
Yep.
And so you have to compare those wages.
Right. They also will look at something that we're missing, according to our HR director, is the creation of job families for upward mobility within the departments for retention purposes. So if you are in a job family and you're wanting to move up, even though the position that you're looking at is not, let's say you're the senior mechanic and there's not a higher position, you could look within your family and we could move you to that position, which might have higher pay. So this study would allow us to do that, to keep our employees longer and give them an opportunity to go up the pay scale. Yeah.
Well, this is, the pay situation is obviously a big deal. Sometimes I watch people in their comments about, well, the city's employees already get paid way higher than anybody else, and why would we want to give them more money? Well, that's just not accurate.
No.
And we all know how inflation has driven everything up, and that people jump ship, and it doesn't take much of an increase for them to do that sometimes, and that we must stay competitive.
It costs a lot more to keep training new people than it does to keep the ones you have.
Way more than to plan for that increase internally and keep them here.
Chief Roberson? The fire EMS accreditation, can you speak to that? How often is that? Is that a new one? Is that one that you do every X period of time, et cetera?
This would be an initiative that was actually 2 years ago that we put in. And we didn't have the bandwidth to do it. We didn't have the resources because of the pay study that came out and the implementation. So there wasn't the financial cushion to be able to hire a consultant to help with that. We looked at contracting that position instead of actually hiring an employee of the city. And the thought there was that we would save on the benefit side of things. But there again, we were up against a financial rock, and we weren't able to, internally, we weren't able to have the bandwidth or anything to take that on ourselves, because it's a pretty labor-intensive process. So this is a new initiative. It's not a continual a reaccreditation or anything like that. It's just one of those goals that we're striving for.
Like a stretch goal or something that repercussions if we don't do it this year?
None.
Okay, thank you.
A tier.
Right.
I have a question. Do we have, in the past, have we been able to stay on track with the projected amounts that you predict for the, over, a couple of years or whatever? Have we been able to stay consistent, and we have?
I'll let Donna answer that, because I know that cash reserves play into that, and I know that that's why we had a large increase, because we kept, the trend was going downward, so we weren't able to keep our cash reserves. And so we had a mill levy increase, which allowed us to get back into in the black, and we're trying to stay there. But I'll let Donna say anything.
I want to say this. We try to be able to control all our expenses, but some things we can't control. You know, with the rising costs in our vehicle fuel and maintenance and electric rates, everything that goes up, we can't control that. But we have to control our budget. So things just don't get purchased if we do not have the budget authority or the money. So we can control it that way. But certain things we're going to have. You know, we have to pay our people, we have to pay our utilities, you know, and we have to keep things rolling. We have to keep the trash trucks going out there. We have to keep the water running. So, but anything, if we ever hit a hard spot like that, we can back some things off to stay in our budget.
So,
Does that answer your question? Is that what you're talking?
well, kind of, yeah. I kind of was just wanting to know, like, whether or not, like, when we project for the future, certain percentages or amounts or whatever for certain things, for things like this, do we tend to stay, when that year comes, are we really close to that
Usually we're pretty close.
projected amount that we predicted?
Usually, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
And Melanie, the reason why there's a true up in like October, and Donna, correct me if I'm wrong, in the last quarter, there's a review of expenditures continuously every month. Like, for example, in administration, Rebecca reviews admin budget at the end of the month and says, we're at 27%, we're at 38%, we're at 44%. And in the last quarter, if we are not in line where we should be, Donna says, hey, everybody, no more spending, we need to slow it down because we need to make sure that we end at 95% at the end of the year, which is based on her projection. So she's making sure that we end at the end of the year where we're supposed to. Does that make sense? So yes, we work very hard to make sure that we do end at the cash projection we should be, or even better.
Okay.
And legally, we can't spend more than we budget either. So sometimes we'll budget more than we think we'll spend in case something happens. We have the authority to spend.
Right. I get that.
So-
Thank you, that answers.
Okay.
I don't think we always hear everything that our people do to save money. My grandson was here the other day, and staff, he wanted to know where poop goes. Which, you know, I just happen to know somebody that allowed us to go out there, and so we went and saw where poop goes. And we had a great tour, and things that I hadn't heard from staff is how we rebuilt the tumblers,
The drum screens.
and it would have cost $600,000 or $700,000 to replace those, and we rebuilt them for a little over $100,000.
Around 100,
And and he wasn't trying to impress me. He just was telling me this is how things work out there, and they were very proud of the fact that they saved that much money. Then the
Centrifuge.
there at the end, it's getting rebuilt. The new one costs over $1 million.
Yeah.
And we're rebuilding it for $230, $240,
Yeah.
$250, I think he said.
And these kind of things are normal for us. We're always, which is like when we say, we may budget for a certain dollar amount, but we try and do what we can
Yes.
to definitely cut those costs down.
But I'm totally amazed that the respect that we do have for taxpayer money, and the diligence that we do to make sure that we don't spend any more than we have to. But it is amazing how much it costs to run a city, and you know, a lot of those costs are salaries, because you have to have good people. But without good people, you can't save the over $1 million out of the poop plant that they shared with me that they're going to save just in like 18-month period.
Yeah.
So,
And along with that, I guess, to me, it's always a quandary when we analyze these things. You know, do we take the 12.7 now, and then on out into the 4 and 5 years from now, it looks healthier, it still slowly goes down some? Or do we take a reduction, say we take 8 or 10%, but then quickly in just a couple of years, then we're faced with either more cuts or then we have to raise the mill levy. So that's just a quandary
that's
for
the
me.
part that's bothered me.
It bothers me a lot when, even at the 10%, because you can look at, all right, swing sets and the accreditation for fire EMS and the mowing. I still don't agree with the 100,000 on the golf course. I'm gonna stand on that one, but okay, we can cut those things, but then you just look out just a couple, 2-3 years, and again, we're gonna be having this decision. All right, it's time to raise the mills a couple, and I have an issue with that. And yet, I also have an issue with swallowing the whole 12.7% right now.
Same here.
Yeah.
Because all 5 of us are taxpaying citizens, just like everybody else. And it's a tough thing.
Yeah, and I think the county, last I heard, they were looking at going up 2 mills, plus taking the increase in valuation.
See, and
Yeah, they had 5
That's a bit
positions.
strange for them, it seems like.
very,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I look at these things, I'm thinking, again, I'm going to go back to, I look at these, each individual, and I'm thinking of swing sets. We're going to have new families, hopefully, that will come as a result of Hillsborough Industries and GAF. Is this the time that we want them to take their kids to the parks and say there's something, the swing sets don't work, or they're broke, or they're old? I mean, when these industries selected Newton, they didn't just select it where it's going to be and not look and consider anything else. And so we know that there's the whole picture for them, and we want to make sure that the whole picture, from the small items to the great, that we're considering those, that we are really wisely considering those, making common sense decisions about how that impacts what's shortly to be here.
Well, and the reason that the swing sets hit the list is because these are items that we put on in the budget that were new because of what we'd been hearing from the public. But you asked us at the last meeting, look at some services that we could consider for reduction. And one of those, to us, was something that's new. We've got playground equipment, or, these big structures, playground structures. But these were going to be just a swing set that we added. There were 4 different swing sets at 3 different parks. And then the right-of-way mowing, this pulled all right-of-way mowing except for 4 locations. And the list is the list that you have, is the list that we would not be doing. And that is, I think Rich had asked us for a service reduction, and this is a service reduction, and it was something for us to be able to pull out. That includes our equipment costs, it includes our labor, because this is a seasonal person that is kind of a seasonal, long-term, goes into the fall, that mows these locations, and we get to them maybe 5 to 7 times a year, depending on the year. But this is saying no mowing at the locations listed.
I think we've talked about this, or it's been mentioned
Melanie?
a couple
Melanie, you might lean up to your mic.
budgets ago, but when we talk about retention and the employees, the amount of money that we're wanting for pay increases, do we, oh my gosh, I just kind of lost what I was going to say.
That gets worse.
It gets worse. That's encouraging. Okay, so I'm going to have to come back because I just lost it.
You're good.
So let me come back and ask that if I know what it is, sorry. Okay, so do we know, are we competitive with other county or other cities, what they pay their city employees? Are we right there, or are we below, or?
The last pay study was completed in 2020, and in order to get us to be competitive, there was an implementation of pay increases in different positions over the course of 3 years. It took us, I think, 2 or 3 years to implement raises to get us to where we needed to be, because we didn't have the funding to implement. It was too much. So it took from 2020 to 2023 to get everyone where we needed to be. Now we're at 2024. My hope is that the pay portion of the study doesn't require large raises, because we just did one it's been 4 years since that study. The bigger part of that, there's 2 things that might affect that. The market, the current market, because of inflation and COVID. So the study was done in the middle of COVID. Since that, the market has really changed,
Right.
which means pay has changed. So that's the one caveat that's pushing us to do this sooner than later.
Gotcha.
The second is the classification. It's been at least 8 years. The HR director went back and she said 2016 classification study was done, she believes. But at least 8 years ago, we looked at all of our jobs, looked at what they do, and realized, do we need this? And if so, is this classified correctly? Is it paid correctly? Is it in the right department? And so it's almost this assessment again, do we have the staffing we need, and are they paid adequately? So I could tell you probably 4 years ago, when we did the study, and after implementation of year 3, which was 2023, or was it 2022?
2023.
Okay. I would say that our staff was paid competitively based on 2020 data. We're in 2024, we're going into 2025. I'm hoping that we're close to being competitive.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
And on average, I think SHRM, if I'm not mistaken, that a pay study should be done every 5 to 7 years. Yeah. But we had COVID, so please remember that. COVID in the market has really, what you paid for something in 2020 is vastly different from
Very
what it costs today. Yeah.
Yes.
I can just tell you from personal experience as a private business owner that our wages have gone up between 35 and 40% since 2021.
Yep.
And we're not alone, and that was just to keep up with our competitors. And, you know,
Well, and during that 3-year period where we were trying to stretch that out so that it didn't kill the budget to increase those, that's a period of time when we had a lot of loss and turnover in our staffing too, in all of our departments.
And that's become more stable.
Knock on wood when you say that.
Can you help me with some of these directions here? Remind me, connector from Spencer to Dillon's.
If you are at South Dillon's and you're gonna go east around the curve,
Oh, that
that's the
road.
connector.
Oh,
Where you're
yeah.
headed to the new Fox Ridge entrance.
So there would be no mowing in the right-of-way over there. What a time not to have mowing when we have, I'm thinking, I can hear on that one. Where is, okay, southeast 24th from Spencer to, I guess I'm not sure where the golf course maintenance shop is.
Almost to the city, the county.
Yeah, if you go to the transfer station,
Okay, I know where southeast 24th is with regard to, what's the name of those apartments out there?
That's pretty much all of
What'd you call it,
Southeast.
Cottonwood? Okay, so you start at Spencer and you go west, is that correct, or is it,
well, this is
Spencer.
Southeast 24th Street
right?
from Spencer, which is on the east side of
Yes.
the interstate, all the way.
It's the whole Southeast 24.
That's what I was wondering. And where's the golf course maintenance shop on South?
It's a ways, yeah. And
So
the
you're
reason
talking
these-
about all of the
Yeah.
right-of-way for that?
The reason these are on our, what's called our right-of-way mowing list, typically these are locations that you may have the county, maybe county jurisdiction on one side, you know, the property's in the county, and on the other side, it's in the city, and it's not a curbed roadway, so it's ditches in most of these places. And so homeowners aren't mowing up to the pavement edge because it's farm field on one side, or maybe both. It may go in and out throughout. And so these are areas that we have picked up over the years, and we try and get mowing done. We left 4 right-of-way mowing locations that we will do, that are not included on this list. One is Meridian from Highway 50 to First Street. That one is ends up with a lot of trash in it, so we want to take care of that one, because that's where trucks go. You know, if you're going to the landfill, it's also an entryway to the city, Meridian, right? Meridian and US 50. The other one would be
Okay.
Old 81 on the north from the city limits to Main Street. So the north end of the city, if you will, to Main Street along the railroad tracks, the boundary between Newton and North Newton. And then East First Street from Spencer, and then a half mile to the east, so Spencer, and you're going towards the airport, you know. And then Old 81 or South Kansas from Southeast 14th Street all the way down to the city limits. Because these are all entryways to the city that we said, hey, let's keep these on. The others, we could look at, if you're looking at for service cuts, this is something that we could quantify and give you a pricing on.
So our objective tonight is to make you worry about what we're going to do at the next meeting?
Kind of.
Please.
Remember, we're going to do, during the meeting tonight, we're going to vote to exceed the revenue neutral rate. And we talked about leaving the mills where they are in that.
Which is non-committal. It just allows us to use
You
the
know, if
entire-
you want to give us a direction, you're all ready to decide, that would be awesome. So we could get ready to publicize what we're going to spend and put that in the paper.
Well,
But you
let's-
do have more time.
So when you
got
say
something in
that,
mind, let's
yeah, when
say
you
it.
say that we're going to vote to exceed and then leave the mills where they're at, that means where they have arrived to as a result. Okay. Not, when I think of where they're at, I'm thinking of where they've been, but you're saying where they are now
At the
as a result.
72.361.
And I think, that way people in our listening audience and as well as this will understand that too. It is a new mill levy,
No, it's the same mill levy, just worth
But-
more.
but you're accepting the additional revenue with that, which means you're leaving this, okay, now I'm getting, okay, you're leaving the mills, all this talk about revenue and mills, and now all of a sudden, what was the mill levy last year?
72.361
Okay, and we're leaving it,
at 72.361.
okay, but we are accepting the additional revenue.
Valuation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
Those mills are now worth 12.7% more.
Right.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, that's a easy way to.
That's
at
the
that.
maximum that we can
Yes.
Okay,
ever
okay.
be. Okay,
So you're saying if we were so settled in each one of our minds of where we were at tonight, you would like that?
I would like that, so I kind of can start getting things wrapped
Mm.
and ready to put on the forms for the state, you
Well,
know,
Well, what if,
publicize it.
what if we don't like any of our options?
Then you tell us what you want us to do.
Well, we only have so much time to come up with options.
We have to do
So-
that. We have to decide on the R&R tonight.
Yep.
Because I have to get that to the county clerk by the 19th or 20th of July. So that's what you're deciding at the meeting tonight.
then they
Later.
have to mail that to everybody.
Then they come out with the mailer and give everybody an idea of what's going on.
Well, I know where I'm settled at. Sure, if you want to hear it.
Well, I'd rather know than not know.
I believe that it is more painful to raise the mill levy in the not-too-distant future and to make a few cuts. That is a more painful route than to just accept the 12.7 increase as is.
Should we be having that part of the discussion in the meeting then? Or, oh, I guess we can't make any decision here.
Can't make a decision tonight, but we can.
Not
share what-
here,
what we
not
think.
here.
Not in this meeting, but
Yeah.
in
The next one.
we can.
Walk us through now to the end of the budget cycle from a time.
Yeah. That can be any time. I mean, once we do the revenue, you're going to exceed the revenue neutral rate, you've already decided that, correct? But this would be the time, if you know for sure you're going, if you're not going to go that high, this would be the time to let the public know. That's just all I'm saying. We can't
Right.
put the full amount in there and you can go down. Or you can, if you're going down for sure, then you could put it in there as well. I mean, that's the option. But I also will need to know, so we can get it publicized for our hearing on August 27th? One is the R&R.
And one is your budget.
But we'll have to publish the not-to-exceed budget, which is the amount of expenditures we're going to have. And that's what we'll need rather quickly. So it'll be, if not this meeting, the next meeting I need to know, which is the 23rd.
We'll put that on the August meeting to publish. Correct?
Well, we can publish any time. If they decide tonight where they want to be, we can publish it immediately and just have it done. But it has to be within 10 days before the 27th.
And when is it that you need to let the county know? What date?
Next Saturday, I think it is the 20th.
These are two separate things.
Yeah. Right, well, I guess that's why I'm, unless I'm just not thinking correctly, I would think that that's why we would want to make this decision soon, or, I mean, now, or is the next meeting too late to make
No.
that?
Not for the
No.
R&R.
Not for the R&R,
Okay,
the revenue neutral rate. If you're going
Okay.
to exceed that, we need to know that. And
That's the one that has to go tonight.
okay.
You
Okay.
have time to do the other one, to decide the hearing time for the other one.
Okay.
I think I'm in the middle between Leroy and Kathy on this one. I mean, we all understand that keeping the mill levy flat for so many years has frankly probably been a disservice to our community. But I also think it's a disservice to take the full amount. So, you know, I'm landing in the middle on the 10%. I'd be willing to take some of the increased assessed value and such, but I'm not willing to take the full amount. So.
That's where I'm at too, with the 10%.
And what was your number, Leroy?
I just said it makes more sense to me to just bite the bullet and accept the 12.7
Yeah.
as it is now.
And Kathy? 12.7?
And it's not, it's a,
Yeah,
it's not just a slam dunk, it's weighing,
very much so.
but I don't,
Yeah.
I don't want to go through I mean, it doesn't make sense to do that here and then turn around in a year, maybe 2 years, and do an increase.
Right, but it doesn't make sense to take the full 12.7 and then bring in these new industries that get full tax abatement that aren't paying 25%, they're paying 25% of zero. So that, all that falls on the homeowners.
Well, and I don't disagree with you on that, but I do know that is the cost for growing. That is what we have to do. It is a bullet that is hard to bite, and we just have to realize it. I know I've heard that from other people, and my response is they could have gone somewhere else. And they'll get that somewhere else, most likely. When a community wants development and wants to have that industry come, we're not the only ones that look at that and say, do what we did. People are fighting for that increase in growth and in business. And I know that it can be painful sometimes when you think of that, because what I've shared with other people is, when I was on this side of the bench and I was somebody that was sitting out there, I could be very critical because I did not understand, and there are people in this room right now that know I was very critical. But on this side, and I was just telling somebody that today, some folks, on this side, it's a whole different look. It's a whole different game. There are things here that the general public, they are just going to have to trust us on. And we want to make wise and common sense decisions. And so we see the things that the general public will not, and we want to be as transparent as possible. And we do want to grow, and we know that there's going to be some pain with it. Pain to the tune of 10 years. We know that. I don't sit here and go, yay, but I applaud the understanding that is behind it in order for us to grow. And so I just want us to be wise. And I think at a time when we're growing, as I've said before, I look at these reductions and I think, I don't want these industries to come in here and say, what are they doing? So I've said that. I don't need to say it anymore. But I do appreciate Commissioner Stenett's consideration and his thoughts too. They're valuable and valid to him, and so thank you.
And I also have to remind myself that when any industry gets that 10-year tax abatement, that is only on the improvements that
Yes.
they are going to make. They're still going
Right.
to be paying the same tax they're paying now. That's on the improvement. And I also want to say I appreciate, Rich, what your standpoint, and I so appreciate the 5 of us honoring each other to have differences.
Yeah.
It's quite all right. And, man, we have such a good thing going here. It's a beautiful thing to watch, so.
Great.
Okay. What
It's
if we,
tough.
yeah, what if we took 11?
Decision.
That'd be somewhere in between. That's giving them, there's a part of me that really doesn't think we should take the 12.7, but I could argue why we need it too, so.
I could too. I'm just really fearful of what the assessed values are going to be next year
Yeah.
with the stuff coming out of Topeka.
Yep.
There's risks.
There's a lot of risk.
Yeah, with them saying that we're still
Yeah.
8% behind of where we
Yep.
need to be.
Yep.
Yeah.
The new law what did the state levy go down to?
What, they didn't get anywhere? You
They
mean
didn't
on
get
the
anywhere
assessed
on the state-
valuation?
Yeah.
No, it's still 11.5. I mean, they talked about going to, what? How low was it going?
No, I'm talking about the state lowered what their
Their
part
portion?
of the mill levy is. It's 1.5
5.
right now. And
I haven't heard that it's gone down.
Yeah, it didn't go back.
it didn't go down in the bill? Okay, I knew they talked about it, but I couldn't remember if it went down. Adam should know. He's a reporter.
Donna, is it possible for you to update that sheet that you had that shows the total mills? And would you, when you have time to do that, would you be willing to do that and send that out? I would like that. I really would.
But it
Is that what
didn't
it went down
pass.
to?
That's what it is now. So it
0.5?
didn't,
To fund education, it went from a 20 mil to a 19.5.
19.5, okay, so it just went down 0.5. Well, that's, every little bit helps.
How did we
the trouble with those forms, Kathy, is I have one for each of the value, 75,000, 100,000, 200,000, 250. You want each one of those?
Well, no, when I did this, when I looked at it, I just did, okay, so I just looked at the whole thing. What are the total mills? Because then you can
That's
take
the
that
total meals.
170 some. So
I
that
just-
part is right.
I just figured it on the wrong, I mean, I just figured on each different valuation, but those always
Okay.
stay the same for each one.
Okay, so but the
I
cities
can
you
give you
said
the-
you thought was not correct?
Yeah, the cities is 72.361. I know
Okay.
that.
Okay. Yeah, that, I mean, that's what helps me. And actually, I will just say really quickly, when I had a phone call last year, someone misunderstood and thought that entire thing, because it lists, it lists all of the thing that we get, the sheet. They were thinking city only for the whole thing. And so I said, oh, no, 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 and I went through, and so that's just one person. And I've had conversations with others, and so I've always been interested in that and wanted to make sure I fully understood it, because it helps me personally when I'm looking at things.
Sure.
Yeah, people are a lot madder at the city because they think that all that tax is city tax.
Yeah, well, they live here,
Yeah.
and that's what they think.
Yeah,
They're not thinking
you're
about
exactly
the
right.
other taxing entities that are involved in that, so they, and I understand, because there was once upon a time, that's how I thought too.
And just as a reminder, when you're looking at that form, then this year, the difference wouldn't be a difference in our mill levy, because if the assessed valuation increase, it'd be a difference in what their house appraised for. So
Yes.
kind of doing a little
Yep.
bit additional math there on their end.
Well, I can pull out my own sheets and see what it was
Right.
a year or two ago, and then here, I mean, that,
Right, that's
Yeah.
the
It's
double
more
Yeah.
whammy.
worksheet.
yeah,
I'll just
Yeah.
send you the one for the $200,000 home
Okay.
valuation, because that's middle of the road. That's kind of what our average is.
okay.
Then you can figure different prices of homes.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
So what else do we need to do?
That's it.
Have we given you,
You haven't really told me what you want, anything else you want me to do.
How's our overnights looking?
Rod, you said something about 11%.
Oh,
Yeah.
Are you serious about that?
well, I was,
Use
I
of
mean, that's
Interest
meeting
rate.
in the middle.
They're good, I mean,
That only leaves, that's a difference of $146,200 over 12.7. That's what's weird when you start looking at the number. I mean, in the scheme of things, it isn't that big.
and it
but
doesn't help that
Yeah.
much, 'cause
Yeah, so you
Like
take
the-
that and divide it by all the houses, and it's,
it's, no.
it affects the high value homeowners a lot more.
Because $200,000 home, it was $35 more
Yeah.
for the year. So,
For
You-
the year.
You do
year.
that 10 times and it makes a difference, but, yeah.
Okay.
Do that for every taxing authority, and
it makes a
it makes a difference.
Yeah.
And then your assessed value goes up, or your appraised value goes up, then your property insurance goes up, so, I mean,
The ripple.
Would you consider making the recommendation to go above revenue neutral rate? Because we need to do that tonight.
We'll do that tonight.
At the 12.7, and at the next meeting, we come back and show you what 11% versus the 12, from 11 to the 12 would be.
We're between 10 and 12.7, so,
Okay.
yeah, that's what you have to work with. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we'll adjourn this meeting. If anybody have anything else they want to comment or say? Okay. We have cheese and